I always liked you, Byron. But you never knew when to shut up. Even bad men love their mamas. Now I think it's time for everybody to go home.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dan.
And I'm Mike.
Welcome back to 15-Minute Film Fanatics. You probably know how this works already. Mike and I, longtime friends and film fanatics, watch movies separately, but talk about them on the podcast for the first time. Today, I'm really excited. This was a Dan pick. We're going to be doing 3:10 to Yuma, the 2007 film by James Mangold, written by Halstead Wells, Michael Brandy, Derek Haas, but based upon the short story by Elmer Leonard, which I had read the day I watched the film. It's great. The story just concerns the two guys in the hotel room. And you know, we'll talk about how this is kind of a remake, although that's the wrong word, for the 1957 movie with Glenn Ford and Van Heflin, but we'll get into that in a minute. Mike, in our first spot, we always talk about our overall take on the film. So what was yours?
I thought that this was a really exciting movie to watch. Obviously, I was drawn to the star power because, you know, who doesn't like Russell Crowe? I really enjoyed this movie all the way through, and I think that it's meant to be enjoyed. There's some Westerns that I think get gritty to the point that they're almost, the grit is the point, but this is...
But not true grit.
But not true grit. Right? This just has everything about it that you would want from an American movie, start to finish, and this movie really knows what you want and anticipates your needs and delivers right on time. I think the thing that I liked the best was kind of the Agatha Christie structure of the group that's that's bringing him to the train station, right, disappearing or dying one by one. There's some unbelievable performances and good lines in this movie, but it's a pleasurable movie no matter where it takes place. And it's a hearkening back to, I think, earlier film structure. This film knows that it's meant to be enjoyed or meant for your amusement and not for your interpretation. Although there are things to interpret.
Yeah, there's a lot in there, right? It's what you call a movie with ideas, right? It's not just guns, right? You know, I said before the 1957 film, which I've seen, and of course I love that movie. And we said True Grit because people call the Coen brothers version of True Grit like a remake, and we know like it's not a remake; it's like a reimagining of the source material. And which I happen to think is better than the famous one with John Wayne. But this one is the same kind of thing. And that's one of many reasons I thought to myself after I finished this, is that this movie should not exist. This movie, this 2010 version of 3:10 to Yuma should not exist, right? First of all, it's been done already, and it's been done really well, right? It's a Western in 2007, right? It's serious. It's got like serious, you know, it's not just for laughs. It's got expensive talent. It's got action, but I think the movie's really about the characters more than the guns. And I think that James Mangold's like, no, trust me, like you're really going to enjoy this, and you're going to enjoy it for all the reasons you like other things.
I think Westerns kind of involuted on themselves a little bit, or became about themselves.
Right. After,
I'm talking post John Ford Western.
Right. You're talking about the Wild Bunch or Unforgiven.
Is about itself. Right. But this movie is not about itself. It's about amusing its audience, which I found really refreshing. That's I think if I had to find a term to sum up this movie, it's refreshing.
That's a great word. Now, James Mangold, who directed this, of course, this is like a dry run for Logan, which he made in 2017, 10 years later, which we've covered on 15-Minute Film Fanatics. And didn't it remind you of Logan, like the look of it and the pacing and the landscape? I mean, everything about it. The music I thought was great. And
I don't know if it has the same team, same cinematography team, but again, I wouldn't be surprised. But you could say the same things about Logan, right? If you go back and watch our episodes, it takes place in the future, but it's not meant to confuse you. It's meant to amuse you. And there is symbolic meaning. There is pathos. It's a fun movie to watch, but ultimately that's the point of it.
Well, let's talk about that pathos, because I think that, you know, like Logan, this is a movie about a good man who's forced into a corner, right? So I think you do care about the characters in this film, right? Christian Bale says, I love that line. You said before, it's got great lines. How about when he says, I've been standing here on 1 foot for 3 years waiting for God to do me a favor? Like, that's a great line. And I like, he's just like Logan. He's the unwilling hero to whom the audience is yearning, like, come on, man, go in there and do it. And he does it. And of course, just like also in Logan, he dies for his principle. He ends up like being sacrificed for his principles. But I think the difference between this and Logan, this is what I want to talk about in part one, is that the thing that ties this movie together is that it's about a journey, a literal journey to get Russell Crowe to Claritin, but it's also about Christian Bale's journey of self-respect. Because remember the very first thing that happens in the movie?
Yeah, he backs off from the fight while they're burning the barn,
right?
And he lets the cows get scattered.
Yep, he's a victim right in the beginning, right? And you know, he says like, she says we got to leave, and he says, I'm tired of watching my boys go hungry. I'm tired of the way they look at me. I'm tired of the way you don't. He hates himself. I love when Alice says, his wife, she says, you know, don't do it. Don't run out there, Dan. No one will think less of you. And he says, no one can think less of me. And that includes himself, right? So he's been living trying to get the self-respect. We find out later how he lost his leg. Remember, he told his kids it was defending the Capitol, but it was because he got shot by one of his own guys. He says, you try telling that to your son. But at the end, remember what he says? He says, you just remember your old man walked Ben Wade to that train station when nobody else could. And I think that the movie does that in the perfect touch, with the perfect amount of pressure to the viewer to make you go along with Christian Bale.
It has some of the same set pieces as Logan. And I think what I mean by entertaining is that if you try to make high art or something, you get maybe 3 set pieces. And you got to plan where they are. And this movie is all set. It's like an island of set pieces that lead you across a river, right? But so here's what I mean by the relationship between that and Logan, right? Try to tell which movie I'm talking about. A dangerous killer is in the home, in a totally domestic situation, eating dinner and trying to pretend like everything's normal, even though it's totally not normal and only his comrades know, right? So which movie am I talking about? Both, right? And it's just, it's not necessarily a repeat of the earlier movie. It's just some of the same domestic tensions and some of the same visual symbolism is exactly the same, but between both movies. However, when it is Russell Crowe, it does work really well. He's very charming, handsome, sinister, and dangerous, and they don't need to really overly dramatize that the only thing that they get away with, there's like an anti-kicking the puppy moment where the rest of his gang is getting ready for murder and he's drawing the bird, right? And if you're drawing a bird before you commit a murder, you either don't understand murder or understand it too well.
Welcome back. In part 2, we always like to talk about a moment or a scene that we thought was really indicative of the film as a whole. Mike, why don't you start?
Yeah, I hate to beat a dead horse here, but there is one way that you can tell what James Mangold is up to, which is there's a moment, it's almost 2/3 of the way through the movie, where a character pops in the movie and then immediately pops out of the movie, and you go, "Is that Luke Wilson?" And there's a lot of moments like that where people make cameos. It's a cameo heavy movie. Exactly like using Christian Bale and Russell Crowe, because we know that Hollywood has an important either or rule when it comes to that kind of star power, not only for budgetary reasons, because often stars like that, it's either a gimmick movie, right? Like what putting Pacino and De Niro in the same movie, you know, but not in The Godfather, right? It's either for the pleasure of the audience or because the movie's about itself. And I definitely don't think it's the latter. It's because that's what audiences like. They like to root for Christian Bale, and they enjoy seeing Russell Crowe. So why not Luke Wilson? Why not the girl who played the romantic lead in Hocus Pocus in like 1992? You know,
why not Peter Fonda? Why not Peter Fonda?
Why not Peter Fonda? Right? Who pops into the movie and you go, huh? Peter Fonda's in a Western. Then he's he's dead. Never mind. Right? And that's kind of the structure of the film. And right, and he dies ignobly, almost funny, right? Because if you see Peter Fonda in a Western, you go, are they going to do like a whole Henry Fonda thing? And then he gets thrown off a cliff. Right. With a funny line, right? That's what I mean by good lines. He throws him off and he said, I liked you, but you never could keep your mouth shut. Even bad men love their mamas. There is something tonally in this movie that while it is about important things, while it is about the West and self-respect and trains, which I'm sure we're going to talk about, it is about surprising and delighting the audience and packing as much into this movie as I think audiences will enjoy. I definitely enjoyed Luke Wilson. What's your moment?
Well, my moment is, it's funny, it's tied to part of that star power. Do you know who the original person who was originally offered the role of Ben Wade before Russell Crowe?
Oh, I forgot. Who? It's really, yeah, it's silly though.
It was Tom Cruise.
Right.
It was Tom Cruise, who couldn't, you can't imagine. I mean, sometimes you hear about these casting things and you're kind of like, oh, maybe, I don't know, but you can't imagine Tom Cruise in that part.
I've stopped listening to you because I know that if Tom Cruise had played the villain in this movie, you'd have already watched it 3 times. We would have done both an episode on it and a one shot. The audience would be tired of hearing about this movie.
Be that as it may, I think that Russell Crowe was great. And of course, like, in the movie, Christian Bale does all the heavy lifting, and Russell Crowe's job is to walk around and be handsome and charming. So I want to talk about my moment has to do with Russell Crowe. It's the moment where, as you said before, there's this domestic scene, and Russell Crowe is having dinner with Christian Bale's family. And it's when Christian Bale tells his son, William, don't talk to him. Don't talk to him, right? And they're very adamant about that. Like, don't let him talk to you, right? And I think what's going on in this film, again, not in a super, super pronounced way, but in a way just enough to make the emotions at the end pay off, is that you have this idea of two fathers vying for the kid, vying for William. And it's almost like Shane, but we don't have Shane. We said HUD was a movie. It was Shane without Shane. Here you have, right, Joe Starrett, Van Heflin, who, ironically, who plays Joe Starrett, he gets a Shane to help him out. But Dan Evans does not get a Shane, right? So I think in that moment, you get a couple things going on. First of all, everyone is cooler than your dad when you're 14. Every other guy is cooler than your father, right? And Russell Crowe is certainly very cool. I love when he has the nerve to say, "Can you cut the fat off? Can you cut the grizzle off?" Right? He asked the kid, "Have you ever been to Dodge City?" So he's been everywhere, and he's alluring. He's the devil. He's trying to tempt them, right? So even when they're in the hotel room at the end, which is what the short story's about, and he says, well, $1,000, that can get you a lot. And I love how Christian Bale's kind of like, yeah, but how would I spend it? How would they know? Like, he's actually kind of considering the offer, right? But we're drawn to Ben Wade too. Because of Russell Crowe's charisma, we're drawn to him too. We see how he operates. And the movie is about, that tension and Christian Bale trying to keep his kid innocent of that because he knows how tempting the devil is. And you can't help as a viewer, though, get sucked in because you think Russell Crowe is so much fun to watch.
Because the lines are fun, so you don't want it to end. And so they do that over and over. It's like what they do when they sleep by the campfire. I mean, I don't know if he's not a Shane. He's kind of like an anti-Shane, because what I'll say is the first guy who disappears Agatha Christie style is the guy who burned down his barn, right? Who gets stabbed in the neck with a fork over and over and over, which, the fork that he sees. Exactly. Now, audiences both love that kind of stuff because it's like, hey, you think just because he's got those handcuffs on that he's not right? Because movie logic tells you that if someone's handcuffed that they can't do anything for whatever reason. But also, Shane style, he does take care of the bully first.
Right. But also, we're told, and we've done our episode on Shane, we encourage you to listen to, we love Shane, but you never get to see Shane's past crime, so to speak, as a gunfighter. You're told he's a gunfighter. He has Alan Ladd has those quick reactions where you're like, okay, this guy's high strung, but you never get to see Alan Ladd kill a guy with a fork.
Correct. All he's got is the fringed pants to let you know that he used to sleep out in the dust. Okay, welcome back. So in part 3, of course, we always talk about the title or the ending or the big takeaway. I feel like we're not going to talk about the title in this one. So let's put the audience's pleasure aside for a second and actually get into what the ending of this movie is trying to do.
After that great set piece of how they get from one building to the next, to the next, to the train station, which is beautifully shot. And I couldn't stop thinking of what we've said about Heat.
I was thinking the same thing.
Right. And what's our joke about Heat? If you gave us all the money.
You could give me a camera. Yeah. You could give me a team of 60 people and still it would be totally unintelligible who was shooting at who, where, like, spatially, what direction we're going in. How does he do? Right. Because you never lose track of that in this movie. Never. Spatially, you know exactly what direction they're going to. And then if you do a point of view shot, you know where I'm trying to get. That's very complicated.
Yeah, if they gave us all the money in the world, the two of us would stand there like scratching our heads like, No,
I couldn't even whiteboard it for you now that they've done it.
Yeah, exactly. So after that's all over and we get to the bit, I think the ending of this film is as good and as satisfying as like the trick ending of Murder on the Orient Express or the Maltese Falcon. And here's why. Just when you think, and I'll admit, I totally bit this hook. Just when you think this movie has eaten the sentimentality pill, and just when you think of William, the kid's telling you before, he's not all bad. I don't think he's all bad. And just when you think, okay, that was a lot of fun, but yeah, okay, Russell Crowe's going to give himself up. He kills the other guys on his team for Christian Bale. He's going to get on the train and do the right thing. Just when you're like, all right, that was still kind of fun, he whistles for the horse.
Mhm.
And as an audience member, that made me laugh out loud. I thought that was great. And it's so good because, yeah, Ben Wade isn't all bad, but he's not a sucker either. And I think the movie gets to have its cake and eat it too in a wonderful, wonderful way.
I don't want to bite too hard into the symbolism of trains, but what do you think trains mean in this movie?
Escape.
I think it's partially escape and partially progress, or like escape as a non-forming manhood. There is something very, very satisfying, very old-timey about this movie, where in the West you either have the highest or lowest values, but nothing in between. I think that's why they try to make all the railroad guys so contemptible. And just like anything else, it's either, depending on what Western you're watching, it's either barbed wire or the train, right? But the East is coming for you.
Yeah.
And everybody's trying to escape it. And that's why I think that they make such strange bedfellows, which is, I mean, this is a buddy cop movie, but it's a buddy cop movie interpreted by James Mangold with 2 stars, and a set in Nevada somewhere.
Yeah, when he whistles for that horse, though, I laughed out loud watching it. I'm like, what a great move.
And there's certainly something with the shooting effects that they only save for the last minute, because the difference between the rest of the gunfights in this movie and then what they allow Russell Crowe to do visually is so different. And so that this movie is about like the delayed gratification of one special effect that they only allow to go off in the last 2 minutes. But it is, again, it's intensely satisfying to the audience.
Yeah, and it's all, and again, to push on what you just said about what James Mangold does well, he whistles for the horse. You don't see him get on the horse, but you know what's going to happen. You just see the horse run after the train, and you do the math in your mind about what's about to happen. And like, that's so satisfying. And it's almost like if James Mangold were next to you, he would say, see, you doubted me, but I was one step ahead of you. And that's a great feeling.
Right. And there's something about control going on. There's something about, right, in the West, you should be in control of your own destiny. So if you choose to ride a train, then you're allowing yourself to be carried somewhere, which is how Christian Bale feels in the beginning. He feels like his life is just carrying him. But you can either limp there or you can ride there, but ultimately you got to be in control.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We hope you enjoyed our conversation about 3:10 to Yuma. Send us requests. You can follow us on Twitter at 15MINFilm. You can also follow us on
Letterboxd.
Let us know what to watch.
We'll see you next time.